My name is Bree Chapin. I'm a visual artist and painter based between Lisbon and New York City.
One of the first things people tend to notice or comment on about my work is my use of very bright colors. In recent years, I've been painting almost exclusively in a neon pink monochromatic palette. A bit about me and where I come from. I'm originally from Long Branch, New Jersey. I've spent my entire adult life and arguably my artistic life so far in New York City. But I recently moved with my husband to Lisbon, Portugal. It's super exciting to be in a new place with all new energy and awash in new inspiration. So I'm excited to see what that will do for me and my work. Certainly, growing up in and around a big city has had a huge impact on me and my work. I really respond to the energy and vibrancy and the colors of the city. I think I'm most comfortable in an urban environment. I love people and being able to be around people from all backgrounds, all walks of life, all interests. That's enormous for me as a source of inspiration, as a source of energy. I was lucky. I had pretty wonderful parents growing up. They were both first generation college grads who had made their way into the professional class. My mom was a social worker and my dad was a lawyer. I don't think anyone in my family really had ever identified as artistic or particularly creatively inclined. So I don't think my parents really knew what they were getting with me. My mom often tells me that as a small child, I would draw and paint on literally everything. Like I'd spend hours hiding underneath the coffee table and drawing on the underside of it. Maybe in some ways my proclivities and behavior confused them a little bit. But they always encouraged me and gave me materials and gave me a lot of freedom to explore and experiment and just make things. I have this memory, like when I was 7 or 8, and flipping through this coffee table book that someone had of paintings by Vincent van Gogh, and I saw the head of a skeleton with burning cigarette. And for whatever reason, it really stuck with me, like it grafted itself on my brain and really is one of the earliest memories I have of really feeling energized by art. I recently did an homage to that piece in my signature palette, all in monochromatic pink, at a pretty large scale. I'd say it's still one of my favorite pieces that I've ever done. And yeah, it all started with that random coffee table book from my childhood. I was a born night owl. I stayed up pretty late all the time, would sneak down to watch television while everyone was asleep. A lot of MTV. I would watch Bob Ross too. So Bob Ross was a huge influence on me early on, as well as being inspired by music and music videos. It just really set my little mind ablaze. As I started to demonstrate an increasing interest in the arts, my parents then would take me to gallery exhibits and museums and things that could really help excite and foster my interest. I was about 10 or so when my mom moved us to New York City, and she would take me around Chelsea and Soho and go to galleries and museums there. This was the mid to late 90s, so the urban art scene there was really blossoming, and it really blew my little mind as a kid to see all that was possible and the exciting ideas that people were expressing. As I got older, I kept making things, drawing and painting. I was also really into music. So once I was able to, I went out to a lot of live performances and shows. Music has always had a huge influence on me, despite me having zero musical talent. I've always had a desire to pursue art formally. My family, understandably, was concerned about the viability of a career in the arts, right? They were always supportive and wanted me to be happy, but they were also anxious for me to find something more stable, go to college and do something safer. So in college and later in grad school, I pursued what one might consider more practical career paths, and then had a series of quote unquote real jobs in an office, corporate world, all that. It just seemed like the smart thing to do. But I found that I kept making art kind of compulsively. And I always had this nagging sense that even though I was doing all right with my quote unquote traditional career, that something really huge was missing, that there was something different I should be doing. And it took, I think, many years and getting into adulthood to really realize how fundamental art making is to me. And at some point I realized, hey, this is what I really want to do. And it's something that I really have to pursue for myself. So I hadn't really studied studio arts in any formal or traditional way. But in 2013, I stumbled on this amazing community called Con Artist Collective, which in a lot of ways I credit as my informal art institute, like my art education happened here. It was this amazing space and community where I could connect with and learn from other artists and writers and musicians and poets. And it was such a huge part of my development as an artist and as someone who had just recently come to the conclusion that I could pursue this part of myself, that I could and should pursue art. And I got to give a shout out to founder Bree Chapin and program manager and director Brandon Wisecarver, and that whole community really, they caught lightning in a bottle, and I feel really fortunate to have been part of that really cool community at that period of time. From there, I started painting more consistently and developing my own artistic voice and perspective and a style. I started having my work appear in group exhibitions and over time, a few solo shows over the years. In addition to making and showing my own art, I've also had the great honor to do some curation and curate some shows of artists whose work I love as well. I'm also the co-founder of the New York Underground Art League with Up Magazine's TK Mills and art curator Evan Salton. We've been hosting art battles at Sour Mouse on Delancey for 3 years, and we're going into our 4th year. So that's really cool, and a really great community has coalesced around it. As for my art career, I'm thrilled to say that I recently made the leap to pursuing art full-time. It was quite scary at first, but it's been really exciting and rewarding to be able to dedicate myself more completely and more of my time to my art practice. I feel incredibly fortunate to begin this chapter of my life. And I'm very grateful to the support and the opportunities that I've gotten through being a part of an inspiring and energizing community of artists and creative people. In many ways, the city as a living, breathing entity informs my style, my use of bright colors, the subject matter that inspires me, seeing graffiti wandering around the streets, brightly colored band posters and neon signs everywhere. Having the great fortune of ready access to art and music and performance has had a huge impact on me. Biggest influences, that's always a tough question for me. I'm a bit of a magpie, so I kind of pull from everywhere and absorb things from all directions. So it's really challenging to pinpoint specific influences on me or my work. I would say from a visual art perspective that pop art has a huge influence on me. I think I always resonated with the high impact visual style. I always loved that it was like a really accessible gateway into the arts. For similar reasons, I've always loved street art and graffiti and other forms of urban art expression. To name just a few specific artists that I feel have had an influence on me. I've always loved the sort of mad, surrealist artwork of Yue Minjun. Another artist whose work I love, the kind of vibrant, emotional, and arresting portraiture of Ninjeka Kunili Crosby. I do think I absorb and grab inspiration from everywhere. Which is why living in a city and around people and around a lot of energy is hugely important to me. I feel most at peace where there's a lot going on around me. And of course, the people I have gotten to know and the artists I've been lucky enough to work with, they're a huge source of constant inspiration for me. Street artists like Early Riser, contemporary painters like Constance Patton, multimedia artists like Erin Coe. If I started naming names, I could definitely keep you here for a couple of hours. There are just so many really amazing people out there doing really, really cool stuff, and I can't help but be inspired all the time. What I'm working on right now? Well, I've always been rather transfixed with light and shadow, and trying to see how I can use those things to express ideas and moments in time. In recent years, I've been expressing myself almost entirely through this neon pink monochromatic palette. I've pretty much only been making work in this color palette for a while, which has a lot of challenges, but is also really exciting for me. It feels very vibrant and very alive. And pink itself just ends up being kind of loaded and interesting in so many ways that I continue to be inspired by and want to explore. Associations with softness, but also like punk. It's kind of an aggressive color, but also like really dreamy. I feel like a lot of artists probably can empathize with this idea, but I feel like we're always developing ourselves as we make work and through the act of making work. And sometimes we don't always have, a clear plan before we start of what we're trying to say or what we're trying to do. So in that way, I sometimes feel I fall a little short when I'm trying to explain what I'm doing or what I'm planning to do. I think probably because that answer is always changing. The answer is never static. It's always evolving and always developing as I go. The advice that I would give to my younger self is to just keep making things. It doesn't really matter if it's good or it's right, or if you know what you're doing or why, or if it's productive, or if you know where it's going to lead. Just keep experimenting and trying new things, and over time it will start to distill into something that makes sense, and the path will become clearer. Try not to get in your own way, and try not to edit before you create something. I feel like many artists can empathize with the challenge of not letting your own doubts get in the way of your work. The other piece of advice I would give my younger self is to wear a respirator when spray painting. It's easy to get caught up in the making of the thing and the creating of the art. And sometimes we neglect our physical well being and our health. So, yeah, wear a mask when spray painting or using other harsh chemicals that seem to so often be a part of making art. Have I ever tried unconventional methods or techniques? Of course, especially early on when I was exploring, again, the creative laboratory of Con Artist Collective really inspired me to do and try a lot of things. I spent a lot of time exploring collage as a medium, especially when doing kind of more political and social justice based work. I found that collage as an art form is really conducive, I think, to that kind of expression. But right now, I'm hyper focused on paint and expressing myself through paint as a medium, especially this kind of electric color palette and the kinds of subjects that I find interesting. Right now, it really feels like this is what I should be doing, and I'm having a blast. I love the music question because music has always had a huge influence on me. It's always been a constant companion for me, and it's something that I've always enjoyed having in my life. Both directly and indirectly, I think it's had a huge influence on the work I create as well. Even though I practice in very visual mediums, I think music always is a big part of what I do, whether it's drawing on my favorite genres and musicians or allowing the music I'm listening to at the moment come through in the work that I'm doing. As far back as I can remember, having the radio or listening to recordings or being able to go out to live music brings me so much joy. And what a time to be alive, right? Like, we can now access a broad spectrum of music from all over the world, from all different types of people and all different types of cultures and influences. It's such an incredible bounty of music that we have the ability to just kind of pull up and listen to, and it's absolutely thrilling for me. I could definitely spend a lot of time going through all of my favorites, but being a 90s kid, I started out with like alternative music and noise rock and hip hop and got into jazz really early on. And nowadays, I really listen to quite, a gamut of music. I listen to a lot of bossa nova. Like, I've been in a real bossa nova phase for a while. And I'm often playing music when I'm painting. And music has had both direct and indirect influences on the work that I create. For example, in 2023, I created an entire body of work centering around the Rage Against the Machine song, Some of Those That Work Forces. I wanted to use my work as a visual artist to express a certain perspective and to ask some really important questions of my audience in the way that I felt I could. And the musical inspiration was a huge foundation for how I chose to execute and to exhibit the work. What do you want people to take away from your work? This one is also quite a challenging one for me to answer. I work largely in series, so like the sort of voice or perspective that each series of works takes on is kind of unique and specific to that series. But in general, I really hope that my work resonates with people and that they are able to feel something, or that it makes them think about something differently. I mean, that's always an exciting possibility with making art and sharing it with others. I am super excited to share that I have a solo exhibition coming up in May. I will be exhibiting all new paintings at Jutta Gallery, Jutta, on Charlton Street in New York. The opening reception is on May 10th, and it runs through May 18th. I'll be showing a whole new body of work, mostly large paintings that I've been producing since the beginning of this year. I'm super excited. I hope if you're hearing this and if you'll be in New York on those dates, that you come by and say hello. I love meeting new people. I love talking about art and music and all sorts of things. So if you can come to the show and say hi, that would be amazing. I'll be sharing updates and details about the show on my Instagram leading up to the opening night. So if you want to follow me on there, it's Bree Makes Art, BreeMakeSart. Also on my website, breemakesart.com. And, feel free to say hi. I love connecting with other people. If you're on Instagram, feel free to send me a DM. And lastly, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the creators of this program. I've really enjoyed listening to the other interviews and getting to know other incredible artists who are out there and seeing what they do and hearing their interesting perspectives. I've been inspired and humbled by the incredible artists participating in this program. I'm excited to be a part of it. I hope you enjoyed some of what I had to share. Once more, my name is Bree Chapin. I'm a painter, visual artist, music aficionado, city rat, based between New York and Lisbon. Thanks again for having me, and hope to see some of you at the show. All right, cheers.